everyone. This is the Ordinance Review Committee. It is August the 31st, and I'm going to call the meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first agenda item is we had a citizen contact Anne about some advertisements, and so we're going to go back and look at Chapter 6.
We have the minutes.
Pardon me?
The minutes?
Oh, gosh, I'm so sorry. I went straight to agenda items. I'm so excited to get moving on this. I apologize. Do we have any citizens here, actually, for the open forum? Anybody here to speak? Okay, then we'll move on to the minutes from our, actually, August 3rd meeting. Is there any discussion about those minutes? No? Okay, do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes. From last
Second?
meeting.
Second.
And so call for a vote. Everyone in favor of the minutes?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, the motion carries to approve the minutes from August the 3rd. Thank you, Anne. Now we will jump into Chapter 6. So, Anne, do you want to give us just a little update about how this came to be?
Ann Nixon, City Clerk, and I had a call from a resident who was upset about receiving the newspapers or the advertisements on Thursday mornings on his driveway, and he had called and emailed Tampa Bay Times several times, and they just won't stop it. He contacted code enforcement, and they had advised him, oh, well, it's not illegal because it's considered a newspaper, and so he wanted us to, the Ordinance Review Committee, to look at it to see is there kind of a loophole for these ads, and is it something to address?
I'll pass these down so everyone can take a look. So Anne brought samples of the items that the resident is talking about. I'll hold them up here. So it's coming in a plastic bag, and it appears to be delivered by the Tampa Bay Times, but possibly not by people who have a subscription. So it's just being dropped. We don't get these in Forest Lakes. Like, I don't get this in my neighborhood.
I get them.
I get them.
We get it.
Yeah, I get them.
Okay, and are you a subscriber?
No, they literally sit on my driveway for 3 or 4 days before I go out there on Sunday to throw the trash out, and I throw it in the trash can.
Okay, so, I went back over and I looked at this and looked back at our notes, and the discussion was how hard it is to enforce. Like, I've got section 6-33 open on the Chapter 6 advertising, and I'll just read it for if someone doesn't have it. No person shall throw, deposit, or distribute any handbill in or upon private premises which are inhabited, except by handing or transmitting any such handbill directly to the owner, occupant, or other person then present in or upon such private premises, provided, however, that in case of inhabited private premises which are not posted, such person, unless requested by anyone upon such premises not to do so, may place or deposit any such handbill in or upon such premises if such handbill is so placed or deposited as to secure or prevent it from being blown or drifted about such premises or sidewalks, street, or other public places, and except that mailboxes may not be used when so prohibited by federal postal law or regulation. Did everybody get that? Okay, so that's a mouthful. Wow. And so, if you go down to 6-35, 6-34, basically people have to put some type of no peddlers or no advertisement posted on their house to not receive handbills placed at their house. Ken?
Tom, does that item meet the definition of a handbill?
I haven't seen the item. I imagine it's just all advertisements.
Sorry.
So in definitions for newspaper, right, so newspaper, general circulation defined by general law, newspaper duly entered with the post office department in accordance with the federal statute. So this is published by a newspaper company, so, but it is not editorial, it is strictly advertising. So it actually doesn't really fit the definition of.
Yeah, it's not a newspaper.
So any printed or written matter, any sample or device, circular, leaflet, pamphlet, paper, booklet, printed or reproduced is considered a handbill.
And because they put it in the driveway, even if someone had a sign on their front door that they don't want handbills, that they wouldn't know because they just throw it on the driveway.
You're
And
throwing it from a car
Yeah,
at 4
so-
o'clock in the morning.
I don't think it should be allowed to be.
Your sign at your front door doesn't mean anything.
And it's not going to really blow about because it's in its paper bag, so it is secure. Now, one thing I noticed, when I went back through this, is we don't have anything in here that discusses how to handle complaints, how to have resolution, what happens if someone's in violation and if there's any penalties. Like, there's none of that described in the ordinance. And so what do? We don't have any direction from the existing ordinance. How do you handle that? What kind of penalty is there to the Times to stop doing this? And, it's probably not even the Times, it's probably a distribution company that they hire privately to do this. And so who do you contact and how do you handle that?
There's nothing in there from the Times, it's just strictly circulars and,
Yes, yeah.
throw it in my
Anybody who needs to see this that wants to see what this is.
And there's certainly no postage on it, so it cannot go into the mailbox.
No, these are,
As a former postal employee, that's,
so when I was a
you can't even
kid,
put a
this
thank
is
you
the
note.
section I went to the newspaper, we always wanted to read the sale papers. That's what it looks like this is that just bundled, because not that many people take the paper, so they can get the advertisements out and they get the numbers by distributing, just not in the paper.
So to answer your question, there's a couple of different things that can be done. It doesn't have to have a specific provision in this section of the code. There's a provision at the very beginning of the code that says any violation of any code section in here can be a fine up to $500. So there could be a citation process, and in other words, the city could issue a citation, and it would go to the local, under what we call the local ordinance violation calendar at county court, and the judge would determine whether or not there's a violation of the code and then assess a fine. The second way to do it would be to issue a notice of violation and have it be sent to whoever is doing it, and they'd be brought to the code enforcement board if they in fact had not come into compliance within the time requested in that notice of violation or courtesy letter. It would come to the code enforcement board, they would make a decision whether or not that there was a violation and assess a fine. They can assess a daily fine of up to $250 a day for each day that the violation continues to exist. So this would be one day, one violation, it comes into compliance. It's difficult to prosecute a case like that. So those are the options that the city has. You can add all the language that you want to in this chapter. It's not going to change the ultimately result that they can bring it through a citation process or code enforcement.
And who does the homeowner contact then at the city to get resolution?
Code enforcement
Code
department.
enforcement.
Mhm.
So.
Greg
so-
Silliman.
I mean, is this not very similar to the churches that keep leaving stuff on my doors? Right?
Well, handbills are allowed if they are deposited in such a way that they're not blown about. If you put something on your door that says do not place a handbill, handbills are allowed. the way this is written. So people can leave something at your door. I get them with the rubber bands on my doorknob. So it's not saying no handbills, it's just saying handbills can't be distributed in a manner that would cause them to be blown about. But if you put something on your door that says no advertising, then those distributors need to honor that. And if they don't honor that, then they call code enforcement and they complain against the person who's violating that part of the code. So in this case, Tom, the homeowner has complained to the paper. A complaint isn't good enough. It actually has to put a notice at a sign at the door that says no.
Right, it needs to be posted.
So he's got to post that first before complaining. Is that what I'm understanding?
Right, he has to post his property, and then that would have to happen again. And then he would issue the complaint to the newspaper. If they didn't do anything, then he would come to code enforcement, and then we would pursue it that way.
I wonder if he's in a deed-restricted community, because in East Lake Oaks, I wonder if he's in a deed-restricted community, because where I live in East Lake Oaks, there's no soliciting, and we get that in our driveway. I just happen to think really that should not be allowed through the HOA. So if he was in a
I
deed-restricted
think
community.
soliciting and handbills, though, are two different things. I mean, soliciting is somebody coming and knocking on your
Okay,
door.
so it's not counted as soliciting.
That's in a different section, so this is just about people bringing paper and leaving paper at your doorstep.
Right,
These are being thrown in the driveway.
right.
It's not a newspaper. It's supposed to look like a newspaper. I mean, we get a newspaper in our driveway from the Beacon. And so there's resolution for the homeowner. So we have steps. There's resolution for the homeowner. He has to go through those steps.
As the ORC, I mean, are we looking to prevent this type of action in the future? And should we make a recommendation here to modify 633?
You know, when we passed through this one before, we voted to add no, we made no changes to this chapter. You know, we were okay with it then. We didn't make any changes. And if going back to the notes was, Tom talking about how hard it is to enforce, and so we left it.
I certainly wouldn't change the code because of one complaint.
Right.
It's important that, you would address actually for the city to address the issue, wasn't necessarily for the ordinance review committee. But if we reacted to every time we got one complaint of whatever 20,000 residents, our code book
Right.
would be unbelievably difficult to enforce.
Well, but at least we gave the person steps that they can follow.
Right. It's something I've noticed going through all of these ordinances, that how little education that the citizens probably have about what's even in here, and then how do you go about enforcing half of what we've looked at? It's a challenge across the board. So I would say if the city knows how to respond to that and there's steps for the homeowner to take, then it's up to code enforcement to contact the paper and let them know that, that this homeowner is submitting a complaint. I'm just thinking of all the steps that has to go through for the newspaper to stop delivering this to one person. So,
Well, I mean, do I find it a nuisance when I see it out there? Yeah, absolutely. I pick it up, I throw it away, it's no big deal, right?
yeah. I mean, I get the ones for, wanting to spray my yard and make my yard look nice, and I try not to be offended, and then I throw it away. So, I'm not inclined to go back in and try to add new language. Is there anybody who feels differently? No. And we'll stick with our original recommendation, which was to not change the language of chapter 6. So then for this agenda item, number 2, I'll entertain a motion to take no action, and we'll leave it as we had it before.
So moved.
Is there a second? Okay, so we'll call it to a vote. Everyone in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so we will leave chapter 6 as is. But thank you, Anne, for bringing that. I mean, I really like the process of actually getting some feedback from somebody and having a chance to, take a look at how the process works, and I'm glad we had a chance to do that. We also needed to go back and review chapter 26 on environment. There was some information that was not included in the discussion previously. Anne, would you like to address the committee on how this ended up back on the agenda?
Ann Nixon, City Clerk. And so originally, the first time we went through this chapter, it was, this chapter involves two departments, and one department responded a little early, so then when this chapter was actually scheduled, the chief's comments weren't really looked at. And when I was working on the beginning of the draft report, I noticed this, and so that's why it's come back, so we can look at the chief's comments. We've already addressed the other department that was involved in this. Look at those Legion Services.
Okay, and that's this.
Yes, your handout would be the recommendations by the chief.
Okay, so I'll turn it over to Steve then. Do you want to pick it up?
On the first page, guys, there's nothing really there. If you flip to the second page under prohibitions, the fire chief wanted to add under section 26-104, he wanted a subsection C that said the burning of household rubbish, trash, combustible waste material, furniture, furnishings, yard waste, construction, or storm debris is prohibited. I asked him if he wanted to elaborate anything on that. He just said that he had no further comments. It basically speaks for itself. He just wanted to make the definition more broad, so those specifics, the specifics were in there, and whoever was there and saw it and knew it as a violation. I didn't see any issue with adding it. I don't know if any of you see anything just on its face. I don't. So I was fine with leaving it in as changed. Flip to the next page, section 26-110. In the original, the way that it was written, there was A, B, and C. He added a D and then changed some of the language in B and C. So he wanted permitted open burning specifically stated, instead of just calling it recreational ceremonial flaring of waste gas and burns for firefighter training. He wanted to make sure that it was called permitted open burning. And then the changes he had to B were recreational fires shall not be located within 15 feet of a structure or combustible material unless contained in an approved manner. Conditions that could cause a fire to spread within 15 feet of a structure shall be eliminated prior to ignition. The way that it was previously written was open burning for the flaring of waste gases is allowed for reasons of safety as long as excessive visible emissions are not emitted. I actually like this is a better way to say that, I thought. Moving on to subsection C, all recreational fires are limited to using clean burning charcoal, coal, manufactured fire logs, or untreated dry wood as fuels. The original C just spoke mostly for instruction and training. So this just puts restrictions on what you can use to start a fire. So I don't think aerosol cans would work, and so he wanted to make sure that this was in there. He'd know better than me, of course, and I'm sure if you guys had any comments, we'd hear him now, but I thought this was a good addition as well. Subsection D, open containers, fireplaces, or designated fire rings shall not exceed 3 feet in diameter or 2 feet in height. I guess that's just to control the size of it. So again, I didn't see any issue with that, especially if it's coming from the chief. Flip the page at the top, there's subsection E. Open recreational and cooking fires shall be constantly attended by a competent person until such fire is extinguished. This person shall have a garden hose connected to the water supply or other fire extinguishing equipment readily available for use. So basically, if you're going to cook or you're going to have a fire and it spreads and you didn't bring your fire extinguisher or have your hose ready, then that's not going to be allowed. Again, I didn't see any issue with adding that either. If you flip to the last page, if there's room in the ordinances with some of the, I wasn't sure if there was, Tommy, maybe I'll say that. It looks like there's a section 26-112, and then there 26-113 through 119 is reserved. But the chief wanted Pinellas County Ordinance article, he borrowed the language from there, but basically to outline the enforcement. So law enforcement and the fire department having jurisdiction, either by ordinance, special act, or agreement, shall have the authority to enter upon the premises where such burning is taking place and enforce this section. Further, the fire department having jurisdiction shall have the authority to either require the extinguishment of any fire not in compliance with this section, or which, in the opinion of fire personnel, creates a threat to public health or safety or may extinguish the fire themselves. The next section was the AHJ, which I understand to mean the agency having jurisdiction shall have the legal authority to prohibit any or all open flames, candles, and open recreational and cooking fires or other sources of ignition, or establish special regulations on the use of any form of fire or smoking material where circumstances make such conditions hazardous. Again, I thought this was a positive addition, basically outlining we have the authority to enter upon the premises if we see something that is going on that you shouldn't be doing. And I didn't see any issue. So unless we had comments from everyone here, I thought all the additions were valuable. And when I emailed the chief, he wrote me right back and he said, unless you have questions, I've got nothing else to add.
No, I agree. I think they're all really good changes.
Makes sense.
So that was it.
I have a question. I just want to make sure that you're comfortable with under 26-110, that the old B and C were just not to be in there to be renumbered, because it doesn't look like to me that they are replacing one another. It looks like he left them in there and maybe it should just be F and G. Did he mention that to you? He said the old B and C should come out?
He didn't say that specifically. I thought B was rewritten in his mind, but you're right, C for the instruction of firefighters isn't in there any longer. And I did catch that. I'm sorry I didn't bring that up. I was basing my stuff off of the chief's notes. But if we wanted to keep B and C, I don't think that would be a problem as they're written. Maybe the two Bs, if you will, but I don't even see them really being as really repetitive.
So I would just, the old B would be F,
Right.
and the old C would be G,
B.
Yeah.
and that way it would flow.
That's fine with me. And like I said, I noticed that initially, and that was a good catch by you. Thanks, Tom.
Okay.
Are there any other comments on this?
I had a question. I was looking, hang on a second. It just caught my eye. On section 26-112, fire suppression costs, it says the city shall be entitled to recover fire suppression costs for the extinguishment of all illegal burning activities. Is there any limit on that?
I wouldn't think so if that's the cost you were
However
having
much it
recover.
costs, up to, including,
The city incurred a loss and is entitled to recover that loss, so I wouldn't think that there would be a restriction or a cap, right?
Okay.
You caused the problem, we had to put it out, it cost us this
Put it
much, you
out.
owe us, yeah.
So I'm trying to find something in here, and I'm not sure if I'm missing it, but in the definitions, they have outdoor heating device, talking about basically these outdoor heaters that run off propane. And they talk in section 26-107, burning for frost or cold, and they talk about open burning or the use of outdoor heating devices. But I don't see any reference to the outdoor heating devices down in the permitted section. Do we need to add those in there?
We talked about that the last time.
Is it considered open?
Well, they call them outdoor heating devices, so like those propane heaters. And I see it referenced in burning for cold or frost protection for agricultural reasons, but I don't see it for personal use.
Is that open, I guess, is that open burning?
Right, I guess
Outdoor heating device under the definitions.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to
Would
think.
that, do we need to put that into the permitted open burning section or add that verbiage in there?
That's why my question, what, is that an open burning using,
I would think it would not be under the definition, but
would that be closed? An open burning would be, I've got a fire
device made
pit.
for burning fuel.
Yeah, because I'm just trying to look at the reference. It says burning for cold or frost protection for 107, and then permitted, do we need to change that to permitted burning and add those into the permitted section? Because technically, right now, those devices are not permitted per this code. At least I can't see it anywhere. Tom, am I wrong there?
Yeah, I don't see it any other place in here. 26109, I just call it.
Yeah, are allowed.
But that's under industrial, commercial, not under recreation.
Right. I was just looking for any other place in there that mentioned those words.
Or if you just add commercial and recreational. I'm thinking of.
I'm not the attorney.
You're at the
I
bar,
think it needs
you're
to
at
be-
the bar and they've got one going.
That would fall under the commercial and recreation, the commercial, that they have the permit to use it per the city fire chief. But it's saying recreational fires shall not be located in 26110. I think that needs to say recreational fires or outdoor heating devices. Maybe I'm wrong there. I don't know. Tom, what are your thoughts?
I think we should probably reach out to the fire chief and see if he has any objection to it, and if he does, we'll include it as a prohibition, and if he doesn't, then we probably should address it to allow for it. Because otherwise, it just is out there in the open, and it's not addressed at all.
Yeah.
We should probably address it. Keep in mind that this was last done in 1999, 21 years ago. It probably wasn't a big thing back then at restaurants. Maybe,
No, and people have them in their houses now on patios.
right.
Yeah,
Wow.
we've got one I've never taken out of the box, seriously. Just sits there. We bought one when we lived back in Jacksonville. My dad's like, here you go, and then we moved down here. and
You
I'm
can
like,
buy them at Costco,
I don't
you know.
I don't need it.
I think if it was me, my recommendation would be take section 26110, call it permitted burning, so it's not open, take the word open out of that, and then put those devices into that section somewhere.
It's not much different than a gas grill, though, really. I mean, you're burning propane like you would on a gas grill. It's not really an open flame, it's contained within a device. So I mean, it's not really an open flame, it's a heating device, but so is my grill.
Well, I mean, I can always ask him, do we change it to this? And then do we include outdoor heating device? I don't know if we borrow the language from 107, or if we just say outdoor heating devices are permitted as long as they meet the environmental protection and a permit is obtained pursuant to section 26111. But I think the first time when we talked about this, and I'm not sure when it was discussed on the committee, but what
I don't recall this at all, so I'm guessing this was the first week.
It might have been, because when I brought it up, it was, do I have to get a permit to put this on my driveway? Because I'm protecting myself from the cold. But this was frost or cold protection that was more involved with citrus and that sort of thing to make sure, okay, you can do this as long as you're protecting that from the cold. And so our discussion was, you don't need a permit to sit on your driveway if you want to put one of these up.
Okay.
And so if we add it to that section, are we saying, well, actually you do? Because what you're saying is, yeah, this is permitted, well, I'm outdoors, this is an outdoor heating device, apparently there's a permit process that I have to go through. So are you creating a violation where it wouldn't make much sense to be? It's one of those say it out loud kind of things. If you're sitting in your driveway, can I put a propane tank with a heater up top? Well, sure. Well, it's just like, well, you need a permit. Like, why? What?
Well, you're not having to get a permit for that.
But the way that the use of outdoor heating devices up there for cold or frost protection, you would need one.
Correct.
And so if we brought it down here, we would just say, yeah, that's okay. But then we'd also have to make sure it was worded correctly where it's no permit is necessary, you can have it, or outdoor heating devices are included in the permitted burn section for recreational use or outdoor use.
Sorry to bring it back up,
That's why we're here. That's fine. I mean, we have to
That's a
talk
good
about
catch.
these things.
So, yeah, and we're kind of at the end of the road. We don't have another meeting
Yeah.
necessarily scheduled. Is there a way we can handle this one outlying question via email?
So not amongst yourselves, the answer is no. My suggestion is we just change the title of 26-107 to read cold or frost protection, so you're taking out burning for. And then add subparagraph B, provision that authorizes the use of the outdoor heating device so long as it meets whatever those requirements are. You know, there's got to be some type of entity that reviews them. I don't know what it is. So we can add it there, just authorize it so long as it meets whatever legal requirements that you have to manufacture one, maybe?
Okay.
I mean, I don't think they have to go through a permitting. I mean, it's no worse than burning a gas grill in your backyard.
Right.
It's just,
And you can understand why the citrus, why you would need one, right? If the agricultural sense, you would
Say that
need.
again, sorry.
You can understand why you would need it if you're in a citrus farm.
Sure,
and
yeah, that's
you need to go-
totally
You need to
different.
reach out, it's a completely different situation. So it's, okay, that section is fine as is. So Tom, your suggestion is add subsection B, make that A, and then add a B for recreational use?
Outdoor heating devices.
Okay.
And this is going to come back to you in your report, obviously. And so maybe the fire chief and I will come up with some language that fits in there, and then you can discuss it when it comes back in the report.
That makes sense.
Okay.
Good.
so we need a motion to, oh, sorry.
Yeah, no. Just, do you need language kind of thrown at you, or are you just gonna?
I'm going to do what I just suggested. I'll create the subparagraph B, address the outdoor heating devices, make sure that they meet certain, whatever the manufacturer requirement is when you buy one, like a grill. And I'll add that language in our subparagraph B, change the title from burning for cold or frost protection just to cold or frost protection. So it takes out that topic of burning, but it still addresses cold and frost protection.
Okay, that sounds good. Is everybody good on all the things we've discussed?
Yes.
Okay, so then, taking a look at this chapter 26, I'll entertain a motion to move this forward with the changes that have been discussed as is.
So moved.
Second.
Second, okay, I'll call for a vote. Everyone in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so we will move forward on chapter 26. Thank you, that was good.
Now the fun one.
I love how everybody finds like one little thing that they can pull out and we can tweak. So, Okay, so let's move on to Chapter 42, Parks and Recreation. We took a look at this at the last meeting, and it was the first time the committee had seen all of the changes that had been put forth, and it was quite a few. It's a large chapter and a lot of changes, and people had questions, so I want to thank staff for coming so you could, discuss this with us and answer our questions. It's a lot, so did everybody end up with pages and pages of questions?
I have a few.
So I was trying to decide if we should just go through this, just like have everybody list their questions on like page by page, and then let staff address it all at once instead of nitpicking you as we go down the road, just kind of let everybody ask their questions. Does that sound fair? Because it's a lot. I have a lot. So I'm just going to number these, and we'll just look at page 1, and we'll just go down. We'll start with Ken and just go around and have everybody. Do you have any changes on page 1 that you'd like to address?
I have a question on page 1 where it says director. It says at the end, or his designee. And in keeping with section 4235, if you look at the top of 4235, there's a change there that crosses out his and adds there. So on the first page, director, should that also be crossed out his and put in there?
There's only one director, so there wouldn't be more than one, so there wouldn't be a there, it would be a his or her.
Is that in?
His or her, we could add in.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, Paula, did you have anything for page 1?
Not on page 1, no.
Jessica?
Not on page 1.
I didn't have anything on page 1. Steve?
Nothing.
It's a question, this might be Tom. Just in reading through it, do we need a definition of what motorized is? And I don't know that for sure if we do or don't, but to avoid having to go through saying gas or electric, I mean, who knows, maybe there's going to be solar. Or just, just cover it all, any kind of motorized.
So do you want to add the word solar under vehicle?
Well, not necessarily, I was just trying to say that might we need a definition of motorized? Just tossing it out there. It seems like we do try to cover different things in here, and just thought, gee whiz, do we need to spell out what motorized is?
Did you happen to notice whether motor was anywhere else in the document?
On page 2, it mentions page 2.
Vehicle.
Yeah, it says vehicle, electric or gas. That's
Right.
an addition.
Yeah, that's what I was starting with. Is there any other place in it? Because if there's no other place that motor is referred to, I would just say that we add in right there the word solar. So electric, gas, or solar.
Section 4266, number 1.
There's more in there.
Hello, Chip Potts, Director of Leisure Services. I saw motorized is in there on section 42-66, number 1, in the first line.
So we can add that then, motor or motorized, since it's in there more than once.
Thank you.
And also in 4269 in the title and in the description.
Do we need to add, is it too early to add self-driving vehicles, or just, are we thinking too far ahead now? Because it's really person driving or operating Do we want to do self-driving vehicles now while we're at it, since they're coming, or?
It's up to you guys.
Somewhere in here I saw, like, any vehicle that carries a person. It was kind of, broad that way, any vehicle that will carry a person.
Yeah, it says vehicle means any wheeled or hovercraft, I thought that was kind of interesting. Conveyance, except a baby carriage or wheelchair for the transportation of persons. Powered or driven by motor.
Yeah, so it can be self-propelled, but it just has to be powered by those things, Jared, so I think that's covered.
Yeah.
I don't think we need a specific mention of it.
Any of the solar, or of the,
To Jared's point, the self-driving,
yeah.
that would still be powered by a motor, or however it was powered by, it wouldn't necessarily need to be under the control of an individual.
Yeah, I think so.
Right, 14269, it says, "No persons shall ride, drive, propel." So, but technically, if it's autonomous, it's not a person propelling it. Well,
We're on page 2.
All right, so we'll move on to page 2 then. And we already discussed a little bit, but Ken, do you have anything on page 2? No? Anybody down the line?
I don't.
Page 2? No, I didn't either. Okay, page 3? Nothing?
I did.
I had a question. Paula? Okay. Let's see here. Okay, yeah, so number 3 there, we were talking about, we were talking about the drones, and I was just wondering if we're going to have signage that says, if there's signage that says where drones are allowed.
I know there's been questions about signage and all the rules and everything, and we don't have rules for every particular rule that applies to every particular park. It would just be too many.
Right.
But we don't right now have any areas that are designated as drone areas. It's something that we could initiate as. I know that we have them at Sheffield Park from time to time, but there's no rules that say that cannot fly or can fly. So that's something that could be a line on one of the park signs that we have that we want to highlight.
Because according to this, then there would be no drones allowed at all because it has to be in an authorized area, and there are no authorized areas, right?
There are no unauthorized areas either, right? So there's...
But, okay, yeah, except in areas specifically designated. So there are no areas specifically designated.
Right, that would be something that we would have to take a look at to see where that would fit, and then designate.
Drones are mentioned,
It's the last item,
Yeah.
last page.
there's, new section 42 is discussing drones, and I thought it seemed to conflict with this number 3. So we're basically saying if you follow the FAA, you can fly your drone, and then on page 3, we say you can't fly your drone.
Which I think it is good to limit drones. You don't want people, if you're at the beach or having a picnic, you don't want someone hovering a drone around, but I've been riding my bike through Sheffield Park, and sometimes there's people with drones. And they don't know if it's allowed or not allowed. Technically, I guess it's not, once this takes effect.
Once this comes about, right, then we would designate what parks would be able to support that type of activity.
Yep. In fact, Chip, in general, I know you said that you got some of this language from other cities around here.
Right.
So I was just curious, for some of these, why you added them? Is it because you just want to have them on the books in case you need to enforce them? Or are these problems that we've had that you want to address? And
There were a few that were issues that we had seen that we want to address, like, for example, specific uses for, say, sports activities in a park. So we don't want football teams playing a game in Orioles Park. It's not meant for that type of activity. It's meant for the sports complex. So that does get addressed in some of the language that we've added that wasn't there before. And then some of the other ones, when we read through, there was 5 different cities that we looked at. It was Safety Harbor, Dunedin, Largo, and Clearwater. And then also the drone language came from the town of Palm Beach. We couldn't really find anything locally, so we just kind of researched it a little bit. So, some of those when we read through, wow, okay, maybe that's something that we should have, not necessarily a problem, but as, the directors and supervisors of the parks were like, okay, yeah, I could see that happening maybe at some point in time. And just for example, I remember when you referenced the last time about dogs or on the pier, that kind of thing. There hasn't really been a problem, but this is something that we want to address, because we could see a potential problem from something like that if somebody were to get bit or something on the pier because it's closed in, and the dog uses the bathroom on the pier or something like that, and it's in the water, so some of those were various reasons.
Yeah. So I think us, the committee, a lot of it was, well, then how do we let people know that this is changing, and like you said, it's too much to put signage.
Right, even the ones that are current are not posted at every park, because the black language that's in here is current language that exists, so those are all not listed everywhere.
Right, so, and as technology changes, it, new issues arise, right?
Yeah.
Right. So these 5 items that are new, those came about just internal staff discussions, and you guys just...
Yes, so after we reviewed, so the 4 staff members that were part of the team, each reviewed, made notes, said, okay, this is something, we discussed it at the table, said, yeah, let's include it, nah, we don't really need to include it. For example, the number 2, there was never anything, the black area above is all that we had before, the black text. Number 2, the use of golf or golf balls or clubs within certain park areas. That makes sense to us. We don't want people hitting golf balls at Orioles. We don't want them playing golf at the sports complex. It's not made for that type of activity. So those kind of make sense, and we said, let's go ahead and include those, and we'll recommend them to the committee.
So number 4 is the one that, aside from the one with the drone not really jiving with the last section on drones, it doesn't seem like we've got that one settled. But number 4, no persons shall engage in potentially dangerous games or practice, football, baseball, softball, horseshoes, tennis, volleyball, badminton, other games, exercise, including thrown or otherwise propelled objects such as balls, stones, arrows, javelins, I kind of get that, shuttlecocks, but frisbees, somebody can't go to the park and throw a frisbee, a model airplane, here's drone again, except in an area specifically designated by the director as suitable for such activity. And, I feel like parks are supposed to be places where people can go play. We don't have a lot of open green space. So Veterans Park, there's great open space. So when I read this, it says that, dad can't bring his 2 kids down with a wiffle ball and a bat and play because it's a propelled ball, or a frisbee. Some people can't go down to the park and play frisbee unless the parks director says it's okay to do it there. So this seems very restrictive to me and counter to what parks are supposed to be for. We're in an era where we want people to put their devices and go outside, enjoy the green space, but we're saying here you can't throw a ball in a park unless we say it's okay.
I understand what you're saying. It's not meant to be super restricted, but I think it does give the latitude for us to say, okay, again, we don't want a team out here. If we see a dad and a son throwing a ball around, we're not going to say, hey, you can't do that. But if we had an incident with a baseball team that was out there about 6 months ago, utilizing the park for baseball practice, they were actually projecting balls over Shore Drive with a pitching machine into the park so the kids could catch fly balls. They're like, this is not safe, so that's kind of the idea.
That's not a reasonable activity.
Right, it's not exactly.
And how do you legislate what's reasonable? I think that's a gray area. It's really hard when the whole idea is that parks are supposed to be for people to come and play. How do you get people to, be reasonable and safe without making it off limits for people to come and throw a frisbee or just play catch with a ball? So I don't know if there's a way we can tone down number 4 a little bit, to have it not be quite so comprehensive of, nothing, no balls.
Maybe actually something a little more vague. Like kind of I think a period right after, no person or person shall engage in any rough or potentially dangerous games, period.
Or practice. I mean, a team practice makes sense, right? You don't want teams showing up to practice.
Right.
And I think people could very easily differentiate a team showing up to practice and a handful of people playing, tag in the park, or catch or frisbee or whatever.
I think you have to love that stones, arrows, and javelins are in there.
That's
I
it.
think you gotta love that.
Yep. This one's from, we got this one from
So,
Safety.
I keep looking for a place to throw my javelin. It's just been a hardship for me.
Chip, I mean, basically, the point is that you and your staff want the discretion to decide whether or not what they're doing is okay or not, right?
Right, depending on the level of, the size of the park, the design of the park, is this a passive park, is it an active park,
Right.
We just want to have the ability to say, yes, this is permissible or not, that's.
So I think it'd be more along the lines of, this is the authority that is given to the Leisure Services
But how do you
Department.
communicate that authority so that, because people aren't going to call you personally and ask
Kind
if
of
they can go to
case
the
by
park and play
case, like,
frisbee?
I guess.
Well, just meaning, you know it when you see it kind of thing. So if it's a tackle football practice and nobody gave Leisure Services a heads up, they'd be allowed to go to them and say, hey, we have the discretion to break this up. You guys aren't supposed to be here. Or you should have called us ahead of time. If it's, 6 or 8 kids playing two-hand touch or tackle in the grass, that sort of thing.
Correct.
Nobody's going to care. So
Right.
if we craft it somehow where it's the Leisure Services Department shall have the discretion to determine if the activity going on in the park is dangerous.
Right, is it suitable for that park?
And be able to
then-
break it up or.
I think I have.
Right, so you're giving them some authority to police the area, but that's not how this is written.
Well, that's
So
what I
it's-
mean, this is way too much like, hey, don't bother going to the park unless you call me first.
That's not what we want.
Yeah, and that's
Put just a
just,
cell number out there. So
Not the idea.
like.
5 is kind of similar to that, it's-
Numbers out.
Actually, what caught my eye on 4 and 5 is 4 says, as designated by the director, and then 5 says, at the end, by the department director or his or her designee. It doesn't seem consistent. If it should be the director and/or his designee, that should be a consistent language throughout the
Yeah, that's probably just an
document.
oversight with everything that we've read through.
Yeah.
Now, for number 5, to clarify number 5, we don't want golf carts just driving through the parks. They're not designed to have that kind of activity, so, you can ride a bike if there's a difference between the different activities.
Sure.
So when we have our Sunset Sounds and we have a moves in the park, we are going to allow golf carts into the park. They park on the grass. So there are times where that would be permissible.
but, roller skates and golf carts, again,
Yeah.
javelin, wiffle ball. So, I just don't want people to feel like they can't bring their little kid and their roller
Right.
skates to go roller skate through the park. But it's how we communicate that, unless it's just, that this is just meant to give you all oversight to make decisions on the spot. But then that gets into
And when you
he
read
said,
it,
she said, and that can be a problem too.
and in that line, the top of that line, it says, no person or person shall use any motorized
Yeah, the motorized applies
skateboard,
to all those
motorized
things.
roller skates, motorized inline skates, motorized scooter, motorized golf cart, motorized bicycle. So it's not just a regular bike or regular roller skates, it's motorized.
I did not read it that way.
Yeah, I read it that way too.
Because there is the word or,
Yeah, or manual.
motorized or manual.
Or manual.
Oh, yeah, it does say
Yeah, or
all
manual.
manually.
That may be- Okay.
That's a good point. Should we just get rid of or manually? No person or person shall use any motorized skateboard or roller skates, but if it's manual, it's okay.
That's a good suggestion.
Right.
I'm not sure I've seen motorized.
Number
roller skates.
5,
I don't know, you never know what can be invented nowadays.
I mean, there's hoverboards out there.
right.
I understand you're trying to keep the sidewalk safe.
Right.
But what is the current rule about bicycles on park paved surfaces? People are allowed to ride their bikes through the parks on the sidewalks? The roller skates and inline skates, same way? So the issue for number 5, in your mind, is really about motorized devices of any kind? Anything that's motorized or hoverized?
Motorized conveyances. Motorized.
Going to be, or, I'm sorry, Ken.
Let's just get rid of or manually operated. So it's motorized skateboard, roller skates.
And Chip, is there going to be, or are there already designated areas, or this is for these types of activities?
For motorized?
Yeah, I mean, because it says at the end, except in those areas approved by department director or his or her designee.
That was just in case, so when we have our sunset sounds, we allow golf carts into the park,
Okay.
basically.
Yeah. I would just, so if somebody buys a hoverboard, they wouldn't be able to use it anywhere. In the parks.
In the parks.
Okay, I just want to make sure, because if I, say I read that and I said, okay, kids, let's go, we're going to take our hoverboards, let me just call the city real quick and find out where the designated area is, and this is going to say there isn't one. It's just strictly for special events or however, when that's approved by the director. So I just want to make sure, because that language
It is,
seem
and
to
we're
me
talking
like,
about different things
hey, I
again.
want to take my kids out, I want to make sure I'm doing this right, where do I go? And the answer's going to be nowhere. I don't know if we need to even narrow it down even further, but I guess you could always potentially designate someplace for it in the future. I mean, I don't know when we touch this one again, so would there be a specific park where, hey, you can use it here ever into perpetuity? I have no idea.
Yeah, I'd have to think about that because the paths throughout the parks are, you have various types of people who are walking them. You have families, you have elderly couples, you have kids running around, and when you throw that motorized component into it,
Right.
you know, the person who's riding it is looking around, and the kids who are running around aren't looking and,
Anywhere.
Yeah, I just equated it more to like a skate park, where it's just like, you guys can't do this anywhere else but here. But I mean, we don't have one, but I understand that. But that's when I was thinking in my mind, okay, well, where would I go? Or, I'm going to run up to the sports complex to use the soccer fields, well, I don't know if I can or not, because the gates are locked, and how do I, reserve a field or anything like that? But I know I can go to Sheffield Park and kick the ball around. It's just the way that it read is telling people, there's a designated area, just give us a call and let me know where that is, and that's not the case. And so these are prohibited unless the department director or his or her designee, what would it even be? Like a special designation or some, you see where I'm at, Tom? I guess I'm trying to craft this language there where there is no area.
So can anybody use a motorized skateboard in a park?
as this is written, no.
At this point, no.
Right.
A scooter,
Motorized,
a golf cart,
no.
no, in any park, unless, an event.
Unless
So
it's a
that's,
special
event is at time, that's not at place. So I'm just saying, so golf cart, motorized skateboard, because they have those now, and motorized scooters. I've not seen motorized skates, but we do have hoverboards, and the hoverboards aren't listed here.
But if someone wants to roller skate in the park with, just regular old-fashioned roller skates, they can do that on the sidewalk, or not really?
This is, if we take it out manually, then yes.
Right, yeah. Like currently, can someone?
We haven't, I've never had anybody kicked out for roller skating in the park.
Right.
Okay, so we're talking about three different things here. We've got no motorized skateboards, skates, hoverboards, scooters, golf carts, or any similar motorized device is not allowed in any park. Those are prohibited in any park. Is that a true statement?
According to this.
Pardon me?
According to this.
According to this, what is it now? Is there?
Now that there's,
So this would be new.
right,
So, and it is your intent then that there would be no motorized vehicles allowed in any park at any time? I'm not talking about golf carts for the thing, I'm just talking about any other time.
right,
So what we want to be able to tell citizens is, you may not have a motorized play vehicle in any park at any time. So that's what that needs to say.
Do we start, excuse me, Pam, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Do we start it as unless otherwise approved by the department director? Instead of starting it with no person, say unless otherwise approved by the department director, his or her designee, no person, and then take out or manually list those things out. And then that gives the leeway of, you can't use them in any park unless Chip says it's okay. And he's never going to unless it's golf carts for the sunset sounds.
It's Chip.
Yeah.
Get past
I
Chip.
mean, I don't know. He's always responsive to me. I mean, I send him an email, he writes me right back. But I think that would be,
Yeah.
unless Chip says it's okay, or somebody he says can make that decision, you can't do any of that here. And then I think that covers everything. And we take out or manually. and
We'll
then we-
take out our
Do we
manual.
add in director's personal cell number to call and ask at any time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week?
Give him your cell.
But, I want to, do you have instances where you have kids who ride their motorized scooter to practice or to any activity in a park? Because that is a transportation for a young person, is to hop on their little, those little scooters now that have small little motors, and
Right.
it's actually transportation for them. So we're saying they can't ride that scooter to tennis practice or to their baseball game.
They can use it as transportation to get to the park.
But what if you have to go through the park to get to your practice?
Yeah.
It'd have to
You're
be,
not going to park it in the parking lot. You're going to
yeah, I
drive it
guess
right.
it'd have to be manually operated the way that, like, once you get there, you can't use the
So I think
motor on your
the
scooter.
intent of that was more or less the sidewalks and the trails that run through the park, not necessarily the parking or driveway. Like, for example, tennis, if you were going to play at Sheffield Park, you come down through the road, you come into the parking lot, and then there's the tennis court. But we wouldn't want you to go to the baseball field by pulling into the trail area and then zipping down on the trail.
Right.
Right.
The wording of these things is always so important. I mean, really, that the devil's in the details, because
Right.
it's going to be somebody who shows up at Ken's meeting and complains that their kid can't ride their scooter to practice, and that's their transportation. And we
Right.
don't want to inhibit somebody. I don't know.
Well, like, for instance, at the Oldsmar Sports Complex where the baseball diamonds are, if I ride my bike up there to, like, watch a game or something, when I get to there, it says no bikes, I just get off my bike and then walk it up there. So at that point, they could just walk their little scooter if they had.
And once again,
If there's a lot of people around, you don't want to be running someone over.
It goes back to communication again and signage, and how we communicate this to residents becomes the hard part. Is that, it's all 5 of these new items, has a education process attached to it.
How do you go to a kid riding a scooter and say, hey, you can't do that in the park?
Right.
It's a park, right? It's a park. And again, we're back to javelins and wiffle balls. I mean, how do you get people to be reasonable and safe while allowing for a park to be leisure and exercise, which is what these things are? And I don't know the answer to that, like right this very second, how we word that, but I think we need to be maybe revisiting the wording on this, because it's a lot of new regulation for people who use parks. And
Probably nearly impossible to police it unless somebody's really
Yeah.
getting out of hand.
Do we
So-
take out the
So maybe you
examples
say
and just say?
judicious use or the safe operation of,
Right.
or something, so that it's not so you can't do any of it at any time ever,
right.
You
So-
have to, there's gonna be judgment call no matter what. So if you use a judgment word, somebody who's policing it can say, hey, we've had several complaints, that's usually where it's gonna come from, or police cruising by, whoa, there's like 14 kids on powered somethings ripping around the trails. No, we gotta put a stop to that, right?
Right, and so it sounds like we want really the ordinance language to give you all the option to make some changes without saying black and white, but you want to be able to be flexible to answer certain situations as they come up. Am I
Right.
understanding that?
Correct.
Yeah.
And, also, at the Leisure Services Advisory Committee, there wasn't a quorum at the last meeting, and so that citizen panel hasn't had a chance to review any of these changes at all. So I just wanted to say that too. So we're the citizens, we're the ones looking at this, and asking those hard questions. And I'm not comfortable with the wording. I mean, just me personally, I would like to massage this. I mean, have the staff go back and maybe reword this, because just throwing suggestions out and, you know, Tom's trying to figure out what it is we really want to say. And I'd prefer, like we did with public art, where we just have well-crafted language that we just submit. And so we might need to take another look at this and do another round to get it right. I think it's important. I think one of the most important things we do as a city is how we manage our parks. So I don't want to rush through this. I feel like, yes, it's at the end, but I feel like we need to do a better job of wording. And this is only page 3. So let's, and I have lots more too. So let's move past this, and then we'll come back and figure out how we handle the wording on these things, especially as we continue on, because page 4.
Yeah, in general, at number 4, we could just make it more vague, not have all those examples, and then just get rid of manually.
And
That would be one way
do you
to-
feel like you get like the questions we're asking about these 5 items, like some of the changes we're asking in terms of the wording? Do you have any ambiguity as to what we're saying? Like, do you need to clarify anything with us before
No.
we skip on to page 4?
No, we're good.
Okay. You know, and actually, I'm sorry, going back to page 3, I just there's a grammatical change I want to make at the very top line. While using any park, it is the responsibility of visitors, so delete each, visitors to conduct their activities. I just needed those to agree. And then there needs to be a colon at the end of that paragraph.
Can I ask one quick question about 3 before we move on? When you did 3, you got model airplane or drone, but you left out like RC cars, model cars. Was there a reason for that, or was it just aerial type stuff you wanted to prevent?
No, we didn't actually, to be honest with you, our conversation, RC cars did not come up. When we were reviewing the ordinances from the other cities, we didn't see any language in there.
Are there people who do that? I mean, have you seen?
I've
people-
seen RC cars out there. I mean, I've seen cars that go a mile an hour. I've seen cars that go 30 miles an hour.
Yeah,
But,
And faster, yeah.
and faster, depending on the group, right? The big guys are not gonna be out there with their,
no, but come on. Day after Christmas, everybody's got their little cars and they have somewhere they got to go race them. I mean, so I totally,
put a little Hot Wheels car that has battery operated. Could I take him down in the park in that?
yep.
Okay.
And it's motorized.
It should say motorized.
All right, so I've made a note to include that as well. And you know what, I'm sorry, the gentleman to my right, I didn't ask you if you had any specific additional comments on page 3.
I did not.
Okay, so move on to then page 4. So my first question under A was, it says there would be operating hours posted. And my question was posted where?
At the park entrances.
So this change in time, is that something that's already in place? Or is this new proposed
This
how
is-
we?
Yeah, this is new proposed because right now it says all city, the original language was all remaining city parks shall be open from the hours of 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. I know we've all seen people at our Olds Park in summertime after 8 o'clock in the evening. It's not consistent with what the activity is taking place there.
So are you going to have some kind of sign at every park that lists the seasonal hours then?
Right, so when you go in, there's already signage at the park. We would modify the signage that's there just to read the hours for each park.
And then, I'm sorry, I just kind of took over. I'll just go down mine and then I'll throw it out to everybody else. So I see that under 4238, there was a note here to ask Tom about letter A, subsection A. And I'm guessing that's in regard to current or recent discussions about use of gender-specific restrooms. Is that what this is for?
Right.
Is that? And then my question on top of that is, you know, are there family-style restrooms, handicap restrooms, so that, you oftentimes will have a handicapped child and a different gendered parent who has to take that child into, and it may not be a wheelchair child, it could be an autistic child who's 10. So family-style restrooms is how that's addressed in a lot of places. So we're, it's,
We don't have any family-style bathrooms. They're either one gender or the other.
sure.
I know, the last meeting, we were seeing letter D where it says you cannot undress in the toilet, meaning so you can't go into the stall and change out of your bathing suit and put on your t-shirt?
Yeah, we watched the last meeting and some of the discussion that went around, and I think Tom mentioned it was more or less exposure is what we're trying to mimic from that. So, and I saw the comments, if you go to the sports complex and you're changing and you're not in a stall, is that illegal? That wasn't the intent of it. It was more or less an exposure thing. So a child doesn't walk in and there's a grown man just changing in the bathroom, and it's like, whoa, or whatever. So that was kind of the idea behind that, is why we put that in there. And that was, we got that one. We came from Clearwater, so that was one of.
Right, yeah, and I was thinking maybe with that one, we just get rid of the word toilet, really, because that's where if you did change your clothes, that's where you should do it.
Exactly, you want in a private stall.
Right.
Correct.
Changing clothes is allowed, but in a private stall
Right.
only. I think it just
Correct.
needs to be specific, because especially at the spray park, I
Yeah.
think it would be unfair to tell
Yeah.
a parent they can't use the restroom to change their child's clothes after playing in the spray park.
Right.
Agree.
So does that sound like a good suggestion? Just get rid of.
Can we say, no person shall dress or undress in any vehicle or out in the open, because it says on the beach. So it's kind of like you've got this vehicle and beach. Like, okay, so we want to say you cannot change in open view in your vehicle or on the beach. And then in using the private restrooms, you must be changing in a stall. You can't be changing out in the open in the restroom. Obviously more succinctly said than that, but that's what we're saying, right?
That's what we
You
want.
can't change clothes out on the beach. We don't like changing clothes in your car.
Right.
And if you're going to use the park restrooms, you have to be in a stall. You cannot be changing out in an area that's not enclosed. Right. We want to change the wording of all of that. And then, Tom, did you have any comments for that subsection A?
No?
No, just leave it as it is?
We're only going to enforce it in weird situations.
Sure.
Obviously.
Yeah.
My mom was in a wheelchair. My dad had to battle the how do you take your handicapped wife to the bathroom. It's a deal. It's a major deal for people who are in a caregiver situation. When you're saying over 6. Yeah. So it is an issue.
On 4238 sub E, it strikes me as redundant to the last sentence in 4237A, the last sentence. And maybe it should be restated, but it just looks like it says almost the exact same thing in principle. No person shall enter or remain upon park property at any time other than officially posted hours of normal park operation except by written permission from the director. And then up above in A, 4237A, it says, it is unlawful for any person to enter or be in any park before it is open or after it is closed. Seemed to be a little repetitive to me. Concur?
Yeah.
So you're saying that
Then
E
saying it twice.
might not be
Pick the one
necessary?
you want. Yeah, I'd say get rid of E probably.
So I think it's much more noticeable in 4238.
Yeah, I was about to say that, strike the final sentence of 37A and leave it in as is, and 38.
Go with that?
Yeah. Chip, on subsection, is it G? Proper immoral actions or dress or profane language. I get the actions or profane language. Who is going to be the moral?
Yeah.
Who's gonna judge that?
Yeah, who's going to, like, what's the immoral dress is where I was.
If you're at the playground with your kids at Ariel's Park and somebody wears a shirt that says F this or F you, or
Okay.
and it's like, I'm sorry, you can't wear that shirt in the park, it's not proper attire.
Gotcha, okay.
That's kind of like
I just
that.
want to make sure, because that's such a, you can fit so much in there.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
another
it's
one of
just
those
like-
gray area, where
Right.
what's immoral to me is not immoral to you.
Right.
Right.
But if it goes beyond, again, I know it when I see it kind of thing, but I just want to make sure. I can just see whoever is yelling at you would call you the moral police. And the way that it's written, that would actually be appropriate.
Okay, I'm going to move on to page 5. I didn't have any questions about page 5. Anybody?
I did. You guys?
Okay. Moving on to page 6. I was looking at number 5, and we're talking about, we're prohibiting the climbing on buildings, fences, structures, historic markers, boardwalk, railing. And I thought we needed to add statues, because there are some lovely statues in the park, and public art. I thought we needed to add those two.
Good idea.
On number 5 at the top of the page. Is everybody okay with adding
Good
those
addition.
two?
I like that, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
And then my other question was looking at under section B, number 2, about not attaching any rope to a tree. Are we against hammocks? It seems to be a very popular thing, the very lightweight hammocks between two palm trees. You see them on the Dunedin Causeway down in St. Pete. It's like a really big deal for people to do, it's kind of hip right now to do that. So are we saying no, we're against hammocks in the parks?
Nope. We'd have to reword that.
Well, as long as
Sorry,
you
they can't hear you.
I'm sorry, we'd have to reword that one a
Okay,
little
so we want
bit.
to reword number 2 so that hammocks are okay? Because it
Yes.
says rope of any kind attached to any tree.
Yeah.
Alexis Wells, Assistant Director, Leisure Services. In reference to the hammocks, as a certified arborist, I have a care about trees. If a hammock, depends on what's used around a tree, if it should slide, it's going to tear the bark, it's going to tear the cambium, and that can deteriorate the quality of the tree. So therefore, that's why we say no hammocks in the trees, because it can cause damage to the trees. If the bark and stuff is damaged, the tree's going to start decaying and can cause further damage down the road.
Okay, so we are saying no hammocks. Okay. Anybody else have any comments to page 6? This is all new language on number 6, but I didn't see, I didn't have any issues with it.
I thought on subsection C, number 1, I really liked the sentence of, no person shall remove the eggs, nest, or young of any wildlife. I think that's really important to lay out, because people will think, oh, look, there's this, bird egg, I'm going to take it home and try and hatch it. No, we don't want you to do that. Leave the bird egg alone.
And so with all of this new additional language under A and B and C and D, how are we going to communicate that? Is this going to be some kind of special signage about how they can't touch the plants, the animals, or?
I think if you look in the top part where the strike-throughs are, there are references to some of what you see in the recommended revision there in the blue area. And we don't have signs at the beach that say, no person shall dig, move, or remove from anything out there. It just gives us the ability that if somebody's out there doing something that we don't feel is conducive or right, which doesn't happen that often like that, but it gives us the ability to say, I'm sorry, you can't do this here, this isn't the proper place, or, it's just not permitted.
Can't have a sign for it.
Maybe there's an opportunity to get a grant to do like some special, like the county has really great big signs where they describe the wildlife that's in the area, and it gives some of those tips on why you don't touch it, and it's educational in nature. Maybe there's some grants to do that sort of, educational signage, because it's part of the process of enjoying nature, but also understanding why we're asking you not to touch the trees or the animals.
Under C1, third sentence from the bottom, apply to de minimis connection. I just don't understand de minimis. Is that,
Can you repeat that?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
under C1, wildlife, number 1, the third line from the bottom, shall not apply to de minimis connection. I just don't know what de minimis is.
Small.
Is that just
That
like-
couple of shells, yeah.
Okay.
It's minimal.
So the kid picking up seashells
Yeah,
is fine.
right.
Yeah.
You can't run your side shell business by going and picking them up, but if you're out there, you can grab a couple, that's a de
Sally can
minimis.
pick them up, but
That's a de
Sally can't
minimis.
sell
I
seashell.
can't bring them in, fill my yard up.
Yeah, truckloads are gonna be are gonna not meet the definition, for sure.
According to other chapters, she can't sell them nor advertise selling them in the public.
Okay, so if everybody's good, we'll move on to the next page, page 7. Letter D, we can't walk a dog down on the pier. And this was one of the items we talked about last time was, is this a change? I mean, is this a problem because people are walking their dogs out there?
Technically, right now, dogs aren't permitted in parks unless they're in a designated area. So they wouldn't be allowed on the pier as of now because technically our Roads Park is not designated as a dog area with a leash. So the idea behind that one is that the pier is such a small, confined area. If you have somebody who's afraid of dogs and somebody walks a dog out to the end of the pier, that person's essentially trapped.
Right.
So it kind of just minimizes that interaction taking place.
So people aren't currently walking their dogs out there.
They may be. I haven't seen it, but they may be. I wouldn't be surprised if they were.
So there would need to be some kind of signage then there to let people know they can't bring their dog out on the pier?
Sure, so if there's an area that's not going to be designated for a dog, then we would mark that. And that would be,
No beer, no dog.
no beer, no dog.
Yeah, currently now at all the parks, are there signs that say no dogs allowed?
It says pet area, not allowed. It says where they are allowed.
Got it.
And that's kind of when we get into the latter parts. I heard the conversation from before about the dogs. What we have is less restrictive than what is currently in place. And I can explain that a little bit when we get there.
Okay. Okay, good. Any other questions on page 7?
Nope.
All right, moving on to page 8. So as I read this, the one thing that popped out in my mind is, and I'm sure there's a mechanism for managing this, but when if you're going to do, say, something like a farmer's market or a kid's day in the park where somebody's going to come in and they're going to have vendors, that each individual vendor doesn't have to get a permit, that there's a mechanism that you do that through your planner, your
Correct.
event company, right?
But for example, Oldsmar Days and Nights, they come to us, they fill out one special event permit. They go out and they solicit their vendors, it falls under their permit.
Okay. same thing for insurance.
Yes.
And then I had another note on here. So we're saying that the Little League can't sell T-shirts on the park property if they're doing it as a fundraiser for their Little League?
If it's at their concession stand and they're selling it there, then that's fine. But they can't just go to Orioles Park or Veterans Park and set up a shop and start selling. They'd have to
They
get a
can as
temporary
part
use
of their
permit.
league there when they're playing.
When they're there at their own place, yes, they can. That's part of their concessions.
Those are my questions. Anybody else on page 8?
Nope.
All right, moving on to page 9. This was another section we had discussion on. And it's my question, under A, vehicles, no signage. And in my scenario is, I have a work vehicle and it has signage on it and I'm coming to the park to play with my kid, to go to a game. I'm there to use the park, but my vehicle that I drive personally has some kind of wrap or signage or decal on the back window. This sounds exclusive of that. The way it reads to me is that no advertising ever in the parking lots. And that's how it reads to me, and so I wanted to.
Yeah, we obviously took this from another municipality, and I think it was maybe Steve who had said it's the purpose or intent of why you're visiting the park. If you're going there to play tennis or walk your dog or play baseball or whatever, that's the intent is not to advertise. You're just going there to park so you can go to the activity. And I think in that line where it says no person or entity shall place or station any vehicle, to me when I read place or station, that's an intended purpose for advertising, not just parking in a parking spot. I mean, that's how I kind of interpreted it when our group did.
So if you park your car in the lot and you have like a magnetic sign, Avon Lady, and you pop the hood to sell Avon in the parking lot, that's not okay.
Correct.
But if you've got a sign that you're an Avon Lady, but you're taking your kids to the playground or to the splash park, you're in the splash park, you're not selling Avon.
Or if you were a business who has a box truck and you just want to park it at the entrance to Bicentennial Park and come back in 6 hours, that's not the intent. That's kind of what this is saying. You can't just park here. We'd have cars, advertisers lined up all over the place out there.
Right.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Maybe it could say, no person not utilizing the park shall place or station any vehicle displaying a commercial sign, banner, blah, blah, blah. Because it still says no person. So I
That
don't
would
know.
make more sense.
Huh? Yeah.
That would make more sense,
That's
what
a
you're
good addition, yeah.
suggesting.
So,
No person not using the park for its intended purposes.
yeah, something
yeah.
like that. Yeah, so depending on,
Right.
you have your vehicle there and you sell oils and I need some frankincense, I might, you're there, right? So it's that gray area, again, that makes it hard to,
don't get
how do you judge somebody's intention?
Right.
Well, I could be there for a game, but then somebody says, oh, you know what, I really need whatever it is that you do, and, I know.
Right.
I know. So it's gray area.
It's probably one thing for you to go up to the person and say, oh, hey, you sell frankincense, right? Oh, yeah, I wanted to grab, okay, yeah, I've got some in the car, here you go. Then for somebody to set up shop and say, advertising, hey, come on over, I've got,
Sure.
all essential oils,
Right. And I was thinking the same thing too, somebody has a work truck and they're using it to pull their boat and they go to the ramp and they're gonna leave their vehicle there,
Right.
so. Okay, anybody other questions on that page? Number 10. Okay, I've got lots of scribbles on this page.
On the digital version. I'm on the digital version.
Yeah, me
My
too.
copy at home.
So, under B, at the top of the page, I just thought we should add magazines and bloggers, because not everybody's a newspaper anymore, or TV. Does anybody have any issues with adding magazines or bloggers to that? A lot of people coming to do photography.
Magazines or what?
Pardon me?
Magazines or?
Bloggers. So, new media. So it's just saying that people who are associated with media are able to come in and take photos in the park.
Right, so they're saying they're allowed to do that.
Yeah, well, it's differentiating that you need written permission to come in and take pictures, but then according to, free press, if you're with a bona fide newspaper or press association, that you can come in and you can take pictures in the park. And I just wanted to add, because bloggers and new media, and yeah, magazines, we need to take pictures too. We're there to do articles and stories like a newspaper. So I just wanted to add those.
Would that be anyone with a blog? I mean, how do we decipher bona fide? Because if I just start like Steve's barbecue blog, because I like to cook, so then I just set up shop at Ari Olds and.
It is considered media today, new media.
Well, just meaning bona fide, so that I guess, because what this would mean is I'm affiliated with this magazine or this newspaper or this press association, I have credentials. But if anyone can start a blog, you wouldn't necessarily have those credentials, but you'd still be able to bypass the rule.
Yeah. It is, new media is new media. They are given the same. Yeah. I can tell you a private story about that later.
Interesting. Yeah, it's fine. I just imagine, because we always do worst case scenario when we're having our discussions, but it's like, you can't take pictures here. It's like, unless you're a blogger. And so I just turn around and I'm like, here, I just started Steve's blog. Yeah, now I'm going to go take pictures. Like, it would never happen, but that's what's going on in my head.
Right.
just Legally.
But, yes.
Okay.
Okay, so moving down to section 4246. I had some, just some words I wanted to add in, maybe for clarification under A. It mentions political party, religious sect, musical group, office aspirant, I liked that one, aspirant, theatrical or circus group, coming to hold an exhibition or a meeting. I thought we should add special interest group in there after political party. And so for-profit has been marked out, but I thought we should add rally, comma, demonstration, and then after that semicolon, or hold any performance or parade or drill in any park unless a temporary use permit has been issued according to the land code. I just wanted to add that in and beef that paragraph up a little bit more.
So that was, public exhibition shall hold or attempt to hold any meeting, perform any rally or ceremony, is that what that was, in that area?
I would actually do rally, comma, demonstration, or rally / demonstration as its own item in between semicolons.
Yes.
And then where it says, or hold any, and I would add performance and parade, or parade. Performance, comma, parade or drill in any park.
That makes sense.
And that was all I had on page 10. Anybody?
Nope.
Kick those little kids off.
Page 11. I don't have anything on page 11.
Nope.
The self-propelled vehicles again. Okay, number 12, I didn't have any comments there
I have
either.
a 12, yeah. On page 12, section 4270, paragraph D, the addition there, or with department director approval. I'm wondering if that "or" should be crossed out and it be written without department director approval. Because all of the things above are kind of prohibited. Should that be worded like that, Tom? Or cross out "or" and have it worded without department director approval?
Sure.
Without yeah.
Well, yeah.
Yep.
You say unless with department director approval.
No operator shall park, blah, 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 without department director approval. Yeah, that works.
Okay.
Page 12, anything else?
Nope.
Page 13, I did not have any changes or questions. 13, anybody?
So you're gonna, okay. Go ahead. Yes.
In 4292, section C, I'm wondering if there's anything about maybe adding provisions to not leave animals in hot cars? Because it says no person shall have permitted to have any dog, cat, or other domestic animal in designated park areas. How about in parking lots? I mean, I think it's already kind of against the law to leave your animal in a hot car.
Oh, yeah, it says, yeah, the last sentence there, to remain in a parked vehicle.
I think the intent was that is if you're in the vehicle with your pet, that's okay. You're in the parking lot, it doesn't have a leash or whatever, you're fine. You can be there with that, but no, the intent's not to lock them in the car and leave them there, that's for sure.
Is there any harm with adding no pet should be left unattended in a vehicle at any time?
Yeah, something like that.
Or occupied vehicle.
Is it unoccupied?
I'm not the legal scholar here, but I think unoccupied vehicle.
I think it covers it if it's remain in a parked vehicle, right?
It's saying that you can leave your dog in the car.
Yeah, it does.
No person shall.
That's basically what it's saying.
permitted to have-
They are permitted to remain in a parked vehicle and properly.
Oh, wow, it does
Oh,
say
they are
that.
permitted.
Yeah.
That's where you provide.
I wrote on here, animals in hot cars, okay?
Ball field.
That's what it would
Oh,
sound
it's just
like.
written, yeah, it's that last.
And you could say permitted to remain in a parked vehicle occupied by a person.
In a occupied, well, yeah.
And to me, I think it's common sense, you shouldn't be leaving your animal in a car.
But here it's sort of saying, here's sort of
Except
saying,
people are still doing it.
I know.
So, yeah, but it does say that, just so they can
it's
remain in
almost
a
like
parked
encouraging
vehicle.
them to keep it, well, you can't take her into the park, so leave her in the car.
No person shall be permitted.
Florida statutes on that,
Not
leaving pets in
I don't
unoccupied.
know the answer to that question, I imagine so.
Yeah, I imagine so too.
Because if there's a Florida statute, I think we just put in accordance to Florida statute, XYZ, whatever it is.
Because the way it's written is saying you can bring them to the park, you just can't bring them to these specific places, but you can have them in your car. But to Jessica's point, that's not really saving
So,
the dogs and cats.
unfortunately, you probably need to be specific. It can remain in a parked vehicle as long as somebody's in the vehicle with the animal.
Yeah,
But they can't be left alone in an unoccupied vehicle.
And we're not mentioning service animals at all? I'm sorry, we're not mentioning service animals, or is that maybe after that?
Well, wouldn't
I thought I read somewhere service animals were.
the use of service animals, that's part of like the ADA?
Yeah, it's always allowed, I guess.
So
Yeah.
that's,
It actually has in G.
Mentioned in G.
Yeah, the accommodation of service animals is provided here and shall at all times be in accordance with the ADA.
Okay, yep.
That's
Okay.
covered.
Yeah.
So are we talking about changing the wording then at the end of C? Yes?
Yeah.
Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, and see if there's a statute that can be referenced. You can change the language here, and then if there's a Florida statute or other rule that we can find.
Okay. Any other discussion on page 13?
Yeah, on the dogs. So, Chip, currently, there are no dogs in parks, correct?
Except
Other
in
than
very
these
few
dog
designated
parks.
areas.
Yes, Sheffield and Janice Miller Park.
There are some areas, like, for example, right along Shore Drive, at the west end of Shore Drive, there's a sign that says dog area permit, dogs permitted in this area, and there's one at the beach, it's on the north side of the road area there that says designated pet area. But outside of that, the other parts of the parks are not permitted, except for the dog parks, which are designated as dog parks, off-leash dog parks.
But yet to get to the dog park area in Sheffield, you have to walk through the park.
Right.
Illegally.
That's kind of why we're trying to address it.
Yeah. So now, dogs are going to be permitted leashed, on a leash.
Leashed.
Now, and as you know, you use Sheffield Park, there's tons of dogs running through there unleashed currently. I mean, with the changes, who enforces that?
That would be, our night staff would be the one who would enforce those type of rules. Or if it's a daytime use, then it would be our daytime staff. Whoever's out at the park should recognize that.
Okay, page 13, we're good? Page 14. So midway down the page, 42-111. The new paragraph A. So absolutely no toy guns except for water guns. And was there any consideration given to the Nerf guns, because that is a very popular thing right now for birthday parties?
Right.
Is for kids to go out and have Nerf gun battles. So our Nerf guns what was your thoughts about Nerf guns?
We actually that didn't come up in our conversation, but that's a good point.
So are we okay with saying that water guns and Nerf guns can be used on park property?
Mm-hmm. Let's see, Nerf.
Oh, yeah. According to this, the Nerf gun discharges a projectile, right?
So
Well, but they're foam, but it's a big deal. It's, right now, that's a very popular, and especially for birthday parties.
Unless you say water guns or Nerf guns may be used, operated on park property.
Yeah, that's what I was
Yeah, yeah.
asking for.
Yeah.
Tom, do we have to word that with other language other than Nerf, since Nerf is a brand name? Would we have to
Right,
set
that's what I was
some kind of
thinking.
We need a generic name for what that is.
generic term for it?
Like?
Yeah, generic term would be if you.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I know.
Everybody knows what a Nerf gun is, but it's
Yeah.
just like,
Soft projectiles are
Soft,
maybe allowed.
soft foam.
well, or foam projectiles would probably work in there somewhere.
And then there's marshmallow guns, too.
Right.
I love those.
I know, but they're a thing. I'm a boy. I mean, these are things. These are real life things they like to play with.
Squirrels,
The marshmallow guns?
pillows.
So,
All right, so we'll come up with, I can do some research too to see if there's another name for how to describe the Nerf guns. 14, any other comments?
no.
15, I had nothing. Anybody? 15, if it's anybody? No?
I just thought, at the top of, 15 we're on?
Yeah, we're on page 15, it starts
Top
with
of
letter H.
page 15A, just thought it was a little wordy, because this is no person regardless of age, sex, or manner of dress. I'm thinking just no person. Take out the regardless. Shall sim, et cetera. It just seems a bit of a wordy sentence and wondering why it's necessary.
Good point.
Makes you wonder why that was in there.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
where did that come from?
Where did that come from? Right.
No person shall swim, wade, or bathe in the waters or waterways within or adjacent to any park other than at such places.
As posted.
That could probably be shortened to, other than places posted for those activities.
They probably had it in there because kids were going in, running through creeks or different canals, like at Arioles and things like that.
Tom, is that one of those things that it doesn't do any harm to leave it as is, and it's just one more thing for you to have to change, or should we change that and take it out because it's?
I think it makes sense to take it out, because it doesn't really add anything to the equation.
It doesn't.
Right.
All right, so we'll delete that phrase between the commas on page 15. That's a good catch. Like, why? But again, where did that come from?
Right.
Boys can swim, but girls can't.
Right.
Any other comments, questions on that page?
No.
Moving on to the next page, page 16. I didn't have any comments or questions. Anybody else? 17 starts at the top, fishing. I didn't have any questions. Nobody? Okay. 18, picnic areas. I had no questions.
Nope.
We're rolling now. Everybody wants to go home. Next, 19, operation of aircraft, camping, horseback riding. So horseback riding, there used to be horseback riding, but now there's not.
Don't get started.
Way back, years ago, remember, Ann? Yes.
Yeah.
With outside groups, really,
Yeah.
and leaving their deposits.
Ugh.
Right.
We'll leave it at that.
We've discussed equestrian parks, though, not on this committee, but that has been discussed recently, right, from city
It was at
council?
a council meeting maybe 8 months or so ago, last fall.
Really, certainly, in the COVID era. But, I mean, there's enough leeway in here that if that was the case, because it would have to be approved by the city manager, I think is what it says, correct?
Oh, actually, that was my question. On 42-119, A, it says, no person shall engage, blah, blah, from the city manager.
Oh,
It's about the only place that has a city manager rather than the leisure services director or his designee. Is that truly the intention, that it needs to go to the city manager for horseback riding rather than the leisure services director?
I would say yes.
Okay.
And it also came to council, and it was discussed at a council meeting as well.
Yeah, I remember, because the mayor had gone to and seen a tour to equestrian park or something like that, and brought the idea back to everybody at the council, and was just like, let's just think about it down the road. Because when I saw that, I was like, that's strange that there would be the prohibition, because they were just talking about it however many months ago, like you had said. Okay.
Okay, so this is something that the preference is to defer to the city manager.
Right.
Okay.
I was just curious.
All right, so moving on to page 20, we have a new section 42, prohibited activities in city parks. Once again, no golf balls, so that's a duplicate. You have that in that other section about golf balls. I'm guessing this was, is this something you all got from somewhere else?
Yes.
Or was this a?
Yes, this one came from Largo.
It seemed like how I read it was, I felt like it was basically to discourage homeless persons from erecting temporary living facilities in parks.
Right.
was how I kind of read
Yeah,
it.
that language.
Except for the golf ball part.
Except for
Except for
the
the golf
golf
ball
ball.
part.
They don't
Like,
mention,
not operate, not constructing a hut, a shelter, anything like that.
So I would say take out D because it's already in that other section. We've
Right.
already addressed golf balls in the parks.
That's,
I was gonna say A, if you, I see, did I see now?
Right. Okay, so A and D out.
right. Right.
This special events is somewhat repetitive to what was previous. What was the intention of adding that as its own paragraph there?
I think just to make note there are certain rules and regulations that pertain to special events that kind of give it its own section in a sense, I think, because of the type of activities that we have and the type of activities people may want to do. And it just kind of gives them some guidance saying, look, you can't participate in, form, or start any kind of special event without previous written acknowledgement. And because we have a review process for those events that involve multiple departments.
Is there a definition of special events in the front?
Yes,
there
We
is.
added it.
Yes, you did,
We added
okay.
it.
Yeah.
Okay, good, all right. Any other commentary on page 20?
nope.
All right. 21, nuisances and noise, I didn't have any comments there. Okay, anybody? Don't have to speak up loud, so I'm just gonna, next page 22. All right, intoxication, drunkenness, gambling, new section, gambling. So my question was going down to smoking at outdoor athletic facilities and indoor and in outdoor park structures. So is this completely new to add the no smoking policies?
This is new to us.
It's new to you to say no smoking at the athletic fields,
Right.
and then no
Because-
smoking on any playground or fitness zone, and then other posted area. So did you all discuss like the beaches, the trails, the pier, the swimming or wading areas where you're going to have crowds of people? Did you look at being more, adding more to that?
We didn't, it's a very touchy situation, it's a polarizing topic. So we didn't, this was kind of a recommendation from us to you to get started with, to say, hey, this is what we're recommending because of the activities that take place, kids in the playground, people working out at a fitness zone, the ball fields where children are or the adults are playing, So this was kind of like, okay, we'll put this out there and this is, I guess, what we're comfortable to get started with. The restrictiveness of it, like I said, can be so polarizing. I mean,
Right. But there's no beer, no dogs, but I can smoke on the pier.
Good point.
Structure? Or is it not a structure?
Well,
or it says posted areas too, so I mean, that kind of gives us the
but the structures, they're real specific about what structures they're talking about, the bleachers, the dugouts.
Yeah, letter A is more written towards athletic facilities, letter B is more to general parks. And that's why we had or other posted areas where we could say, okay, no smoking on the pier.
So if you're going to have the no alcohol, no dogs, you could just add no smoking. Because
That'll eliminate cigarette butts being.
Right.
well, that was my other note was, there's nothing in here that discourages litter, that littering of cigarette butts anywhere else is prohibited.
Good point.
Chip, what about vaping? Did you specifically leave that out?
Left out what?
Vaping? Did you specifically
We,
leave that?
we did, we went back and forth on that because we just really didn't have any guidance on it in a sense. It was kind of bring it to you guys to kind of discuss as well. The reason with the smoking, the secondhand smoke, and then vaping, I haven't seen any studies that said that you can secondhand vape. So it was, how do you eliminate that? I know it's not necessarily what we want taking place in the parks, but
Right. Well,
the litter from it,
drug use too, so you don't always know what they're vaping, and that falls under, no drug use, no
Yeah.
alcohol and drugs, and it's
And
that gray
vaping
area,
is-
really hard to enforce.
Yeah, and vaping is hazardous, so do you want little kids seeing their?
Right, but the issue with the no smoking is to eliminate secondhand smoke exposure for people,
And trash.
and you don't really get secondhand smoke exposure from vaping.
Fire risk. Yeah.
fashion, all the other things.
But, so I would just like to, under other, have you, just, when you go to put your signage up, add no smoking where you feel like there's crowds of people that could, rather than put it in here. I hope you'll look at other opportunities to limit secondhand smoke exposure. And then can we add a C saying that litter is prohibited of cigarette butts?
Yeah, actually, does it say anywhere there's no littering allowed in any of the parks? Seems so basic.
Yeah.
There was a section, let's see, about trash, but I think that most of it had to do with,
Dumping, wasn't it
shelter
dumping
rentals,
or something?
using the shelters. Where do we have that? Refuse and trash 42-142. Says if there are no trash receptacles available, then refuse should be carried away, so I'm assuming there's no cigarette deposit stations that you would have to put it out and take it away.
What number was that, Chip?
42-142. The last, the blue line in there. It says tobacco products.
Covers it.
That's placing into a container.
And can we just say littering is prohibited at the very end of that?
At the, of 42-142,
Yeah.
that last sentence?
Just add that as the last little punchline there, littering is prohibited?
It sort of says it in a roundabout way that you have to carry out your refuse, but I wouldn't mind
Yeah,
having.
tell people.
Right.
Littering is prohibited.
I wonder, would it be if we said littering is prohibited right after activities? So it's by those using a park for recreational or park activities, period. Littering is prohibited, period. If there are no trash receptacles, then you have to carry it
Yeah,
off.
there you go. Yep, I like that.
All littering. You have to add all, or just?
It's kind of like saying every person regardless of, it's just every person, so if it's just littering, you wouldn't need to say all littering, I wouldn't imagine.
Can you mind repeating that so I can?
Sure, and right before that blue sentence, it says, of such receptacles may be so used only by those using a park for recreational or park activities, period.
Yep.
Littering is prohibited, period, if there are no such trash. So you say,
Okay, just add it right there.
so, I mean, yeah, so you can't throw it on the ground, and if there's nothing there for you to throw it out, you gotta take it off of here too.
Yeah.
Got it, okay.
I like it.
All right, 22, are we good? And then the last page, 23, I didn't have any additional comments other than that the drone section seems to conflict with the earlier section that we're going to look at rewording anyway. But anybody else on 23?
Nope.
Nope. Okay. I really appreciate you coming and standing here to ask all these questions. But y'all gave this to us, you started it.
You know, we looked at it as an opportunity, I mean, because a lot of the stuff that's in here is maybe old and outdated, and, you know, there was a lot of stuff, we did spend a lot of time, and, you know, we just wanted to give you guys an opportunity to, you know, take a look at some of the things that, whether we see them on a day-to-day basis, or things that we've heard that happen at other parks and places around the area or in the country, and it's like, okay, well, that kind of makes sense, and throw it out to you guys and say, hey, what do you think about this? Does this make sense to you? So appreciate the opportunity to work on it. It's very eye-opening. I appreciate what you guys do.
Very thorough.
Yeah, that's great.
All the changes.
It's really good stuff, it's good work.
Great job.
All right, so,
Thanks.
thank you. Ann, can you give me some clarification on procedure now? I want to ask the department to reword some of the larger sections that need rewording, how that works with our schedule.
Tom, what do you think of the idea of we'll just work with the department heads and then we'll present those changes as part of the draft report?
Not following you. So
She's saying, how do we make those changes? Like, there were still some questions on some of the wording and stuff like that, so that maybe we can just go with staff recommendations to add to the draft report and bring that back, rather than come back with a few little bits and pieces at another meeting.
Right, I think that would be the best way to do it. And then you can make your changes in the report. It's not finalized, it's just a draft report.
Okay, I didn't want to drag everybody back again, but I also felt like
Well, that
some
40
time needed to be spent to wordsmith some of that on page 3 before, turning it over. So just how we need to go about getting this in a final form so we can have it approved to move on, or?
Well, I'm thinking, our suggestion is that we will work on it from the staff perspective and put that in the draft report that we present to you guys. You guys are going to be looking at that draft report.
And you would do that in the next time we get together, or send it by email? How does that?
Well, what kind of timeline do you think we're looking at now?
Another couple of days. Ian has already prepared the majority of the report, and I had made some changes to the report, and there are a couple other things I needed to add to it, plus this stuff tonight we need to finalize. So a couple of more days, and we can get it out to you.
And I think we were looking at maybe giving them a month to look at the draft report. So maybe the idea might be not to have an October meeting, but to meet again in November.
Either that or just not have the September meeting.
Oh, right, we're not having September, meet in October.
Yeah, so we meet in October so we can get it finished.
Okay, all right, I'm okay with that. So do I need a motion to approve what you just said, or?
No, we got a consensus from you, we understand.
Okay, just,
What's the October date?
We already have an October date on the books.
We just have to find the October date.
okay, so.
10-5?
Well, my recommendation
The
would be,
changes to you.
right, well, we'll work on the changes together, Tom and I will. And as long as we can get that report to you, I'd say the next week and a half, then we should continue on with an October 5th meeting. If we run into any delays, then we can keep you updated, and just to give you guys enough time to review what we'll email to you, because it's a lot, and you guys have done a lot of hard work.
Okay,
Very good.
all right, so then I'll move on to the next agenda item, which was to discuss any other outstanding items from previous chapters. Did anybody have anything that they wanted to bring up? I actually do, and I apologize because I know it's 8 o'clock, and so I will try to make this really short. But in going through.
Thank you, Chip.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. So in going through the
Thank you.
parks,
Okay.
there is, what part? Let me find my page and I'll tell you where I want to. It's on the, crap. Okay, on page 10. Under public demonstrations
What's that?
and parks, I'm back on parks.
Oh, back on parks, okay.
On page 10,
What's it
section
start with?
4246, which is both of those, A and B, addressing demonstrations, and B specifically public disorder. These two paragraphs only apply to parks. And so I was looking at possibly taking those two paragraphs and moving them into environment to include within the city limits, other areas outside of the parks. And just wanted to throw that out to everybody, that we've got this language that protects the parks from demonstrations and needing permits, because that's what it says. If you want to have a demonstration or a rally, you need to get a permit. But it doesn't say that anywhere else in the city. There's no other ordinance that I could find that addresses demonstrations on city property without a permit.
So for instance, when they have that day of prayer, do they have to get a permit for that? Because it's not in a park, it's just on a public property?
The National Day of Prayer to this point has not had a permit, but they just kind of work with the city and sort of rent, we allow them to use the facility but I don't recall any permitting process for that.
Coordinated with the city. It wasn't independent.
Yes, coordinated with the city and sort of a tradition is how it's been handled.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that if we add it somewhere else, then we're not screwing up that kind of stuff.
But I printed out the, how to apply for a permit. But there isn't anything in the ordinances that references that you need to get this permit process in place if you want to hold a demonstration, gathering, public exhibition, anything outside the park within the city. So one of my questions was, if you have to get a permit for an event, do you have to have specific language as an ordinance to match? Like, don't we need to tell people that if you want to have a demonstration in the city limits, you have to get a permit? So it's a question kind of to the group and to our experts.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that question.
It's a good question.
So it's,
Because it would be on any public land. So in any public space within the city limits, a permit is necessary in order to hold whatever event is described in that ordinance, right?
right, but it's only parks.
So I understand that.
Yeah.
What you're saying is we would need to expand it.
Yeah, so to take what they've got for parks, and the only place it really made sense to me was to replicate this language with some changes, because you have to change park to whatever public property we were talking about. So some language changes and moving that, and it looked like it would fit in environment as a new section, 26-41. So this is, it would come under noises to attract attention. There's space to add another section right after that, where we could take these two paragraphs with some changes, and that would specify like what city property we were talking about, not park, but roadways, sidewalks, public buildings.
Right, I mean, yeah, it would be public.
Yeah.
So in looking at the permitting, so 30 days, you need 30 days notice to have an event. Residents who live within something like 200 feet have to be notified within like 5 days of applying for that permit. So there are some safeguards for residents to be notified, and that there's a process then if somebody were wanting to do some type of a demonstration in the city limits of Oldsmar. Now, that doesn't stop people from doing something impromptu without there being, an accountable person who's looking at setting up an organized demonstration, but at least there would be an ordinance on the books that would say, you can't gather here. And
constitutionally, are we allowed to say that?
Yeah, that's where I'm getting at. It's like, you're butting up right against the First Amendment,
Right.
I think.
Because any peaceful protest is allowed, right?
It is.
Yeah,
But where?
right.
So where can you have that protest and when? And do you have to give notice to the people who live there? You know what I mean? So it's that fine line between, obviously, free speech, yes, but citizens and the right to not have somebody just show up in their neighborhood at any time. There isn't anything,
About, your point about where is well
so,
taken, yeah.
you know, marching in front of City Hall is different than marching through somebody's neighborhood. You know what I'm saying? So
And it does sort of go with nuisances, I guess, if you're saying if they're going to be causing a nuisance. Maybe that's why it could go in there, but.
So, and the other thing I looked at was parades. There's nothing in the ordinance in the traffic section that prohibits somebody having an impromptu parade through a neighborhood.
But doesn't kind of that fall under the environment,
You know,
under the
so you've
umbrella
got that
of
special
unnecessary
events.
noises?
There's some,
Yeah.
there's,
And it's kind of vague, but I think
Yeah.
it's pretty encompassing. Unnecessary noises prohibited, and the creation of any unreasonably loud, disturbing, or unnecessary noise in the city is prohibited. That's a pretty
So-
blanket statement.
So for instance, there was a recent protest that made news in front of the post office here.
Right.
All right.
Right, would they have had to permit that?
the post office is federal property, right? So that would be,
I don't know where they were on the property, I just.
They were
read
out
that.
by the road. I
They were out
saw.
by the road?
They were by Tampa Road.
So that's within city limits on the sidewalks, which,
Really, that's,
It's not a park,
right,
park.
not a park. So, but it's also not residential,
right.
right?
So you're thinking maybe just residentially if they want to?
There.
In a residential area?
I think our where is valid, very valid.
Yeah.
I think where, when it comes to city property, is valid. Like protesting on, you know, inside of the rec center and things like this. But if you pull a permit for it, you're fine.
If we add this language, right? Right now, it's like, if we add extra language, then you would need a permit to do something like that.
Right, and I mean, you could even say, you know, gatherings of more than 25 people. I mean, you could set a parameter. I don't know, I'm just throwing it out there because it's could be a tactic for the future, and now's our opportunity to just do some preventive measures to protect residents and also fairly allow people to protest, but to have something in the middle.
It's a tough one because it,
Yeah, that's right. I'm
It
just
is,
like,
it is, but-
I would need to do so much more research on
Yeah,
that before I could
that's-
say one way or the other how, like what the language should be and where it should be. And it's just tough to do on our final meeting after 8 o'clock to come up with.
maybe look at other
let's make
cities
this
and see if they
suggestion.
put any language in.
Yeah, I didn't get calls back today because it was, I'd been thinking about it, and then when I saw this in the parks
Yeah.
document, I thought, well, it's great that we have the language to protect the parks, but what about residential areas in the city?
And you don't know if it's addressed somewhere else anyway. And that's what I mean, where it's, okay, that's a really specific issue, and so who would actually control that? So does it come from up here, from down here, from down here, from down here? And would we just be adding another layer when it's already addressed somewhere else? And I don't know the answer. So I can't have much feedback on what to do with it, is my point.
Interesting point, though.
Anybody constitutional lawyer in here?
Well, so how about I leave it as food for thought, and then if anybody wants to do some research on it, I may do a little further research myself. We can, before the door is completely closed on the process,
one other comment, it might be a little early for this, but I think one of the things we should do is leave a kind of historical document for 10 years from now when the next ORC comes together, just recommendations. Hey, do the long chapters first. Just some just saying, as far as guidance as to best practice, speed that process up. Oh, and don't have a national pandemic during the process either.
I thought it was global.
So,
Global.
only parts.
Global. Okay, so any other discussion of previous chapters? I'll throw that out there again. So the next meeting, October 5th, that's the date we had?
Okay.
Yep.
All right, so 6 PM, October 5th. And then if there's no other business, this meeting is adjourned.
Awesome. I'm
Zero,
not
zero still.
I'm not touching it because I'll break it.
This could be it, they could be on to the next level.